Hello everybody, my name is Hydrix. This is my first time doing any video, so bear with me through the jank as I share my thoughts on my favorite killer. So, Behaviors finally announced a design preview on what they would like to achieve with the new Skull Merchant rework, and it's... As a person who is a merchant main and has stuck with her through her best and worst periods, I thought it only right to give my 2 cents on a design preview that will fundamentally change Merchant once more. The design preview was originally made as a way to run concepts of reworks by the community before the developers were to actually begin working on the power and release to the PTB. This, I believe, was most likely done in an attempt to not repeat the absolute shitstorm that was the 7.7.0 PTB, where the twins were reworked after being promised for the longest time and made the strongest and least counterable killer in the game. So, in an attempt to make twins more popular and less oppressive in their playstyle, what Behavior tried to do was, instead of their current system where Victor latches onto healthy survivors and just does a flat injure state for survivors that are injured, putting them into the dying state, what they tried to do was make it to where instead it is the opposite way, where instead if Victor hits an injured survivor, he will latch onto them in the dying state, and if they are healthy, he will just take a flat health state. This arguably resulted in Victor becoming the strongest killer in the game, having 0 counter if he were to hit you, and being able to take 2 health states in no time flat, with your only hope at not being downed being either to find a pallet or to just pray he misses so you can kick him, which made him extremely unbearable, unfun, and incredibly oppressive. After receiving much needed feedback that this should be locked away never to see the light of day again, almost all the changes made during the PTB were rolled back, with only quality of life features like number buffs and the ability to recall Victor at any place, making it into live servers. This basically resulted in a ton of resources being poured into something that immediately was scrapped upon its preview in the PTB. So, the design preview is back, and with it we have info on the dev's vision for my baby girl, and while I would like to stay positive about this, as Merch is in desperate need of love in her current state, I will say that currently I am unimpressed. Seeing others' reactions to these changes, both mains and non-mains alike, I do see several positives, but I also see several problems that are suggested in this rework. I think it's best to start out with the devs' intentions for this rework. In this, the devs have pointed out 3 key points that they hope to achieve with this rework. They state that their 3 main goals are to strike a balance between being fun to play as and against, to preserve the intel focus over Kit, and to simplify her power and make it intuitive for players of any skill level to understand. Another thing that the devs stated is that longtime merchant mains may not like these changes due to the changes being far more different from previous iterations, which is understandable as this preview does heavily shift from the trap-based playstyle that her current iteration encourages, and that many people have come to love. So now, let's get into what the rework actually is before I share my thoughts on all the changes. So, Drones 2.0. Skull Merchant can deploy a stealth drone, she carries a total of 5, which scans its immediate vicinity and provides intel back to her. After a short activation period, the drone gives off a subtle audio and visual indication of the area being scanned, revealing any survivors on the radar who are caught in its 2 rotating detection zones. Importantly, we've slowed their rotation speed slightly and toned down the visual intensity of these zones, removing the large scan lines to replace them with something more subtle. Namely, you'll see the direction of each detection zone as they rotate, but the detection zone itself is invisible. This gives survivors an impression of the space that's being actively scanned, but requires them to proceed cautiously. Once a stealth drone has been active for a short period, Skull Merchant can choose to take control of a drone from a distance. During this time, she becomes undetectable as her controlled drone becomes the primary threat. These stealth drones move slightly faster than her base movement speed and consume a new resource, power, unique to each drone, while being controlled. Power is consumed slowly as the controlled drone idles, and slightly more is consumed while moving. Skull Merchant is also able to use a burst of power to activate drone propulsion. This charged power sends the drone flying forward at high speeds relative to how long it was charged. Hitting a survivor, the drone propulsion causes them to lose a health state. If you hit a survivor or collide with an object during this action, the drone will be destroyed and return control to the Skull Merchant. Like drones themselves, drone hacking returns with a greater degree of risk and reward. Like before, drones can be disabled by survivors by inputting a series of button presses while close. If a drone is disabled, the Skull Merchant's aura is now revealed to the survivor that hacked the drone, providing useful intel. If the hack is failed, they are revealed by Killer Instinct and are prevented from attempting another hack for a short period. In addition to her drones, Skull Merchant has another power that ties into her radar. While the name is currently TBD, let's refer to it as a global detection power. Once this power is charged and activated, a global warning plays for all survivors. For a short period afterwards, any survivor who actively sprints is revealed on her radar. Of course, crouching, standing still, and hiding in lockers all prevent detection. Adding to the intel provided by stealth drones around the map, this should help ensure killers are able to easily keep tabs on survivors' movements. So now that we've discussed what the devs are offering, let me guide you through my thoughts on all the new aspects, from the most positive changes to the most negative. Firstly, let's talk about the drones themselves. These function similarly to current Merchant's drones, where they spin around, projecting a thing that detects survivors. Though in place of scan lines, now we have detection zones, which appear to project a spotlight-esque zone instead of the very precise scan lines of current Merchant. These Spotlight-esque detection zones seem to be a mix between the release Merchant's AoE detection zone, though with the counterability of current Merchant's scan lines. Though I and others agree that these are far less skillful than scan lines due to their lack of precision, in the context of removing lock-on and claw trap system, their lethality means as a chase tool are now gone, and now they act solely as an information tool. While this is quite a jarring change, I do believe that the detection zones being far more stealthy can have potential, with the best drones needing to be placed in high traffic areas to get valuable information on where survivors are, while additionally being placed in positions that either waste a survivor's time trying to access it, or are extremely hard to locate. Next up, let's talk about the suggested global detection power, as it's eloquently put. This is described quite similarly to Red Light Green Light, or has also been described as similar to Rainbow Six Siege's Lion Operator ability. I love this idea. Being able to detect survivors outside drone's radius would fit very nicely into a more info-focused Merchant, though I will say it does have its kinks. One thing that I am concerned about is the ability will be very weak if the global detection power is unable to detect survivors performing conspicuous actions. While the forums do only state that crouching, standing still, and hiding in lockers all prevent detection, which all makes sense, it could also be implied that the inability to detect conspicuous actions, similarly to the scan lines currently, will also not work. This might present a problem, as in order to make an ability like this lethal, it will require survivors to do absolutely nothing or risk being detected, making this similar to a time-wasting ability like. Next, let's talk about changes to drone hacking, as while this does provide counterpoint of similar vein to Vecna's magic item showing Merchant's aura whenever a drone is hacked, this is going to need to be far more explained and fleshed out in order to make it not absolutely busted against really coordinated teams. In Merchant's current state, hacking minigames are not timed and require just 4 directional inputs. If this risk is to remain for the small price of a few seconds in order to disable a drone's detection zone, the ability to pilot, and all that on top of revealing Merchant's position, this would make it incredibly unfun against coordinated teams going around disabling drones as soon as you place them. This would be an annoyance even greater than having your hag traps wiped away or bear traps disarmed as soon as you place them. The only way that this would be able to work is if you up the risk of actually hacking a drone. This could be done in multiple ways, but I think the simplest way would be to increase the amount of inputs required to hack, making it more susceptible to being interrupted or more susceptible to user error, and also making the drones unhackable for a duration if the survivor is careless and gets detected while trying to sneak up. Lastly, we have the main meat of the rework, the ability to pilot drones and ram them into survivors. And I'm just going to come out and say it, I do not like this aspect of the rework. I despise it. Firstly, I just want to get the smaller problem I have with this ability out of the way. Sorry about that, I just felt I had to.
Bits out of the way, Adriana Imai is a wealthy CEO who hunts down her prey, who uses her drones and her technology as supportive tools used to monitor her prey, back them into corners, and to debilitate and startle them, while she herself gets in personally to feel their blood as she finishes them off. This rework just completely invalidates her as a master at tracking and hunting. With her just kamikazing drones into survivors, she loses the sophistication of the hunt. She loses the class and apex predator aspect of her character, which is one of the main reasons that I did fall in love with her character. The claw traps perfectly fit into Skull Merchant's arsenal, being tracking devices driven into her prey's flesh that sufficiently startle and debilitate them. I mean, I'd be scared shitless if I had a GPS tracker latched onto me while I was being hunted by a serial killer. But this additionally gives Adriana the chance to revel in the kill and is meant to weaken them, not outright kill them, as well as giving her a challenge as she gives the hunted a chance to fight back or to run away. With these suggested changes, Adriana feels far more lazy than active, simply hopping on her little smartphone and going bonsai as she uses a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment to just crash into her prey to damage them. She loses the sharp and cunning edge that allowed me to love her, and just replaced with these changes feels dull. Okay, now that I'm done yapping about lore, this is also a very, very poor power design gameplay-wise. Firstly, crashing a drone into a survivor is presumably going to take up flat health state, regardless if you're healthy or injured, and this runs into a problem that characters like Knight and Twins have, where you get downed on the other side of the map and you're just left there slugged for so long. This either makes her downing potential extremely frustrating for survivors, or is completely invalidated by anti-slug perks like Unbreakable, Exponential, or We're Gonna Live Forever. If you hated twin slugging, Merchant will now be able to do this on top of being able to monitor objectives and your slug body. The camera feature of the drone control also does not state anything about being not able to see survivors, and it's presumably just going to act similarly to like a flying biopod. So good luck trying to work on generators, totems, exit gates, and your slug teammates undetected, as now Merchant can just monitor them, as well as contest anyone who tries working on these with a possible damage state. This leads me to the final issue that I see with this. As many people have pointed out, these drones are basically like flying mini dash killers with Dracula bat physics, and as though not stated, they will presumably be able to fly over dropped pallets and windows, so being able to chase survivors like Victor while avoiding any of Victor's counterplay sounds like fun to me. So overall, you can garner that I have very, very strong feelings about this rework. While it is a neat concept, I will say it does leave a lot to be desired as a Merchant main, with the main focal point and drone piloting showing to be riddled with holes and being arguably more oppressive and boring than even OG Merchant, and the changes to other aspects proving neat but not offering much lethality. These suggested changes will need a lot of workshopping before they can even be released on the PTB, which, I mean, is the point of the design preview, so good job, Behavior. I will say, I am not against these ideas. My main love of Merchant has been her information aspect, using what I know about people's locations in order to act and apply the most pressure, and they outright stated that they are keeping her an info-centered killer. From what was offered in this design preview as well as recent changes to Merchant, I've honestly understood what Behavior is trying to do with her, and I kind of like it. Turning her less into a trap-centered killer and more akin to a pseudo-stealth, pseudo-information killer. The undetectable gained when placing a drones in her current kit is not stated to be changed or to be nerfed, and neither was any mention of reverting her terror radius back to 32 meters with this change, as with the upcoming release of Kaneki, Merchant in her current form has had her terror radius reduced to 24 meters, making her stealthier than ever. Though this is not perfect, I feel like I can salvage this concept using what I've garnered of the dev's intentions, of what to do with her identity, and sticking to the general themes present in the design preview. Here is my take on a perfected power for Merchant, turning her into a part stealth and part information killer that keeps her identity of using technology as a supportive tool to hunt her prey. Keep in mind that I am not a game designer and I have no idea if this would actually be feasible. We would never see unless it was offered onto a PTB, so take it with a grain of salt, don't take any of the numbers too seriously, and I hope you enjoy. Stealth drones. The Skull Merchant has an inventory of 5 drones that are able to be deployed around the environment in stealth mode. Deploying a drone in stealth mode grants undetectable for 8 seconds. While in stealth mode, drones spin clockwise at 100 degrees per second while emitting 2 detection zones from their front and back. Detection zones extend 12 meters with a 15-degree cone. Detection zones are invisible to survivors but do show an approximate area that the detection zone is scanning. Holding out the radar and aiming at a drone will allow you to recall or change the rotation. So yeah, this is just a basic summary of how the drones work. It's not really nothing too much to explain, just a little elaboration on the detection zones and what they do, yada yada. Whenever a survivor is caught in a detection zone, that survivor will have their location revealed to the Skull Merchant on her radar for as long as the survivor remains in the detection zone and for an additional 8 seconds after leaving. Survivors will not be detected while performing conspicuous actions or standing motionless. When a drone detects a survivor, it will become unhackable for 10 seconds. Survivors are able to attempt to hack drones by inputting a series of 8 directional inputs. Succeeding will disable a drone, disabling detection zones and rendering the drone unpilotable for 45 seconds. Failing will equip a claw trap and cause the drone to enter an unhackable state for 10 seconds. As I stated before, I did feel like the risk for the risk and reward system of hacking a drone is way too low. It's way less risky for the reward of disabling. So in this, I just decided to increase the directional inputs as well as to make it unhackable if a survivor gets detected while attempting to get near it. And I did also mention claw traps. They will be coming back as I feel like they are an important part of her kit. Though I will state that these claw traps will not damage survivor. They will just be equipped for a duration, not injuring or putting you into deep wound. While inspecting radar and aiming on a drone in the environment, the Skull Merchant is able to pilot a stealth drone, becoming undetectable while piloting. Drones move at 130% speed and are able to fly over drop pallets and windows. Drones have a limited power that is consumed when piloting, lasting up to 15 seconds. While piloting, the drone is unable to see survivors that are in the dying state, motionless, or performing conspicuous actions. When a drone's power fully depletes, it is destroyed, added back to the Skull Merchant's inventory, and control is given back to the Skull Merchant. When resuming control of the Skull Merchant from a piloted drone, gain undetectable for 6 seconds. One thing that I did flesh out from the original concept is that now drones that you pilot are unable to see dying survivors, survivors that are motionless, and survivors that are performing conspicuous actions. This is mainly to prevent slugging situations where you just place a drone on top of a survivor, keep on monitoring it, and contest anybody who tries to pick up with a damage state. But this is also to reduce the Skull Merchant's effectiveness at just placing a drone at generators, exit gate switches, hex totems, and prevent them from camping them, as now it will just not show survivors that are performing conspicuous actions. Though I will say that a Skull Merchant who is observant will still be able to hear injured survivors, hear conspicuous actions, as well as see particles similarly to whilst phasing a spirit, or in bat form as Dracula. So there will be some kind of skill to that. Hold M1 to charge and fire a claw trap up to 10 meters. Firing a claw trap takes 1.5 seconds, and while charging, the drone is slowed. Once a claw trap is fired, the drone is destroyed and added back to the Skull Merchant's inventory. Survivors hit by the claw trap from a drone will become injured when healthy, receive deep wound if injured, and will be revealed on the radar for the claw trap's duration. Claw traps have a battery life of 30 seconds. When a survivor with a claw trap enters a detection zone, they become 5% hindered and have their battery depletion progress paused. So, as I stated before during the stealth drone part of the concept, claw traps are back, and this time their means of application are far different. Instead of having the lock-on system that we have currently, these are now a ranged projectile in a similar vein to Xeno or Deathslinger, where they are your means of damaging whenever you find somebody while piloting a drone. This alleviates the lore issue that I talked about earlier, as well as alleviates the issue of just being able to down a survivor from far, far away and leave them slugged for a duration, as now you are required to actually go to that survivor in order to fully put them into the dying state and prepare them for hook. This also adds a considerable more amount of counterplay, as you're firing a single little shot that can be easily dodged, and if you miss, that drone is destroyed and you have to go and redeploy that or pilot another drone to take over to that location at the survivor you missed. One thing that key merchant players will notice is that claw traps no longer inflict a broken, so survivors can be healed if they do hit a claw trap, as well as when a survivor with a claw trap enters a detection zone, they become 5% hindered. This hindered, I'm not too certain about. I did want to try and add something to help with chase lethality, but I know the hindered is not a fan favorite and it's really weak currently, but I don't really know what else to do. You could remove it or buff it up, but still, I don't know how to implement some kind of catch-up tool without over complicating the kit when the point of this is to simplify. So let me know your thoughts in the comments of how you change this without, like, you know, adding a whole nother aspect to the power. The final aspect of this power is Recon Sweep. Recon Sweep will gain charges while survivors are tracked on the radar. Upon reaching a threshold, the Skull Merchant will be able to activate Recon Sweep on a radar. Activating Recon Sweep will trigger a loud noise notification for all survivors before activation, and upon activation, Recon Sweep will cover all survivors in a detection zone, revealing any survivor who is not standing still or hiding in a locker. Recon Sweep lasts for 15 seconds. So yeah, the global detection I've named Recon Sweep. I think that is a killer name. It is a badass name. I haven't suggested it on the original comments on the YouTube community post for a name for this global detection power. But yeah, I did make it it's no longer something that charges up slowly like Static Blast. Instead gains charges kind of like Dredge's Nightfall, based around how long or how many times a survivor is tracked on the radar, and is able to be activated, and basically just everywhere becomes a detection zone, which is the best way I could put that. And I made it last for 15 seconds, which I feel is an appropriate time for, like, survivors to waste as much time as possible without making it overbearing. So now I'm gonna quickly throw up the add-on pass that I did. A couple name changes, like low power mode was changed to business card, and the loose screw add-on was changed to gyroscopic rotor swivel. But you can look and see what they do. I'm not gonna explain them in detail. That'll take up a lot of time. But yeah, a little add-on pass I did for this new power concept. But anyway, that is the end of my thoughts on the design preview for Skull Merchant. My thoughts on, like, a power concept that is salvaged from it. I'm not really, again, I'm sorry for this. I'm not really used to doing these types of videos. In fact, I'm not used to doing any types of videos at all. This is the first time I've, like, properly edited a video. Thank you again for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the video, on my power concept, on the Skull Merchant's design preview, your thoughts on Skull Merchant herself. I should also put this in that I stream live on Twitch at twitch.tv/Hydrex_X. I'm currently trying to reach affiliate status right now, and I would be so grateful if you would come in, drop a lurk, drop a follow, or just come around, say hi. But yeah, again, thank you to everybody watching. I love you so much, and I appreciate you all, and I hope you have a great rest of your night. Thank you, and goodbye.